Bonjour, Mes Amis. I recognize you from somewhere. Are you perhaps your cousin? Spoilers ahead and verbal disclaimer that all content warnings from the game apply. I probably should have clipped this and reused it every single video, but my IT skills aren't good enough to do that. But that aside, our goal today is very simple: to hate on Verso. And that's not a very difficult thing to do, is it, considering the things he does in the game? But I think he is even worse as a character than he appears to be at first glance. What if I tell you the biggest antagonist of the game isn't Renoir, but Painted Verso? 50 Cent has shown us that we are all not hating to our full potential, so let me explain why exactly I believe Painted Verso is the biggest villain of the game. To start us off, Verso doesn't want a happy ending. He throws his sister's letter away, which hoped both parties could coexist, the Canvas and the Defender family. Instead, it seems like Verso will do anything to make the conflict worse. If you have seen Batman, you notice a lot of similar traits between the Joker and Verso. Both are pathological liars and can be extremely manipulative to get to the ends they want to. Verso has deemed that his ending is the correct one and will do everything in his power to make it so, even if it means selling his soul to the devil. Verso, in full consciousness, chose to have his entire family erased from existence. He has to have believed that they had souls and lives, as he confronts Maëlle when she gommages Painted Alicia, saying she didn't leave him the chance to say goodbye to her. Yet he is at peace with the concept of everyone being sacrificed. Why? Painted Renoir makes his case face to face with the curator as to why they should be allowed to live. More importantly, as to why Painted Verso should live. Yet Painted Verso is standing there without any concern on his face, no empathy or even a call to the party to prevent them from erasing Painted Renoir. He isn't even shocked when Maëlle is able to gommage Painted Renoir and doesn't shed a single tear, as if he expected this ending to happen. Like he knew this was possible for Maëlle to do, and when Ciel asks him about what Painted Renoir meant with his last words, he deflects with zero emotion. I'm pretty sure that's the behavior of a psychopath. Yet he shows he is upset when Painted Alicia is unpainted. But this is Verso we are talking about. He could have faked the whole interaction to appeal to the party as someone with a heart, kind of like Alistair or the radio demon from Has Been Hotel. A lot of people say Claire hates seeing things in her likeness, but what about Painted Verso, who is treated as a copy? Maybe he wants to take out the whole world so nothing of the original Verso is left at all. You can see in this scene, he seems devastated and gives an angry look to Maëlle. Yet, as Master Sam pointed out, you clearly see Maëlle giving him this condescending look, and it's Ciel that comforts him, not Maëlle. Also note how Verso grabs the petals after Painted Alicia gommages. If he truly believed that painted people could be revived with their souls, he would have asked Maëlle to revive her then and there, because he was the one who taught her how to do so later on in the game. But he doesn't. It's not like he's reluctant to teach her in the first place, but why not then? Back at camp, Verso wants alone time. Maëlle is the one who initiates conversation with Verso. Here, she claims it was Alicia's decision and they should respect it. Interestingly, she didn't give Verso a chance to talk to or try to change Alicia's mind. Painted Alicia's mind, I should clarify, right? We see Verso's anger towards painters. Maybe it was circumstances that made him the villain he is, but every villain has an origin story. His hate seems strong enough to want to destroy everything the painters hold dear. The entire canvas itself being destroyed is his selfish goal. He also says it's not the same thing when Maëlle mentions how he was ready when Painted Renoir was gommaged. Interestingly, it seemed like Verso pinned the blame on Painted Renoir, that he was the one who wanted to erase the canvas and everyone in it. It's not the first lie he would have told. Another important observation is he doesn't mention Painted Claire. He's perfectly happy with her being tormented for all eternity, so he doesn't want to release her from her pain and forgets he has a sister left at all. If you saw my last video, the key point was we can't trust a single thing Verso says, because he is always lying or telling twisted truths. It is better to ignore everything he says completely, or you will end up being manipulated. So this scene, where he claims to have met Claire only 3 times, we can completely ignore this. He could have met her only once or 100 times, we wouldn't really know. However, the reason I am showing this clip is here he admits that he didn't help any of the expeditioners on the beach or dark shores, whatever name you want to call it by. Mael pushes this further and asks about Gustav, to which Painted Verso replies that yes, he let Act 1's ending happen and could have acted to prevent it but didn't. A little further on, he helps Mael paint a message to her father that will only make things worse, almost as if he is pushing her further towards conflict. Painted Verso does admit that he has been watching over Mael and visiting Lumiere. However, he has equally been on the continent doing God knows what, right? We don't know what he has been doing on the continent this whole time. Mael came into the canvas world 16 years ago, but from conversation with Esquier, we find out that the last time Verso met Esquier was over 3 years ago. So he has probably been in Lumiere some point in the last 3 years, or it could just have been wandering the continent for all we know. We don't really know, but at least this tells us that he hasn't been fully in Lumiere for the last 16 years. He's been exploring the continent. But the question really is, how does Verso know the exact minutes? Esquier is counting because he is bored, but for Verso it seems like every move is calculated, almost like Eisen from Bleach. Now at this point in time, you might think Verso is a small-time villain, not deserving of being ranked against Eisen, but the things I will say next might change your mind. First of all, how does Verso know about the Lumina converter? He brings back Gustav's arm here with the Lumina converter attached to it and gives it to Lune, saying this is important. If you remember, when Gustav was facing Painted Renoir, the converter was attached to his bag and not wound around his arm. The arm falls off and the converter is still on the bag. This can only mean Verso removed the converter from the bag and wound it around Gustav's arm to bring back. Notice how he isn't carrying his backpack. Maybe this was the reason Mael was suspicious of Verso and asked the question, and it makes sense that Luna should have noticed this as well. She was the observant type and academic. She was also close to Gustav, so would have known more about his habits and how he were the converter. Now, the knowledge about the converter makes sense if Painted Verso has been watching Expedition 33 members from the very beginning and knows everything there is to know about them. But why would Verso want to know everything about the expeditioners? It's not just limited to Gustav either. During a camp dialogue, Lune offers to show insights into Lumina, being a key area in her research, but Verso replies back that he knows already, which suggests he might have looked at her research back in Lumiere. Where am I going with this, you might wonder? Well, just one last piece to fit to the puzzle. At the end of Act 1, we see Painted Renoir is surprised by Painted Eline's appearing at the scene. This shows that the Painted Alicia appearing at the scene. I should note. A typo there on my script, sorry about that. This shows that the Painted family cannot sense one another's presence. So how did Painted Renoir know that the expedition was going to land on dark shores? Well, this might blow your mind, but what if Painted Renoir didn't know? How did Expedition 33 get routed to dark shores? If you remember from the prologue, Lune was researching the records of Expedition 0 to trace the path they took, and who was on Expedition 0 and keeping an eye on Expedition 33? Well, who else but our dear antagonist Verso? Now what if Verso was the one who led them to dark shores to be headhunted personally by Painted Renoir? He just used Painted Renoir for his own purposes. It makes sense for Painted Verso to be able to get closer to Mael if there are fewer expeditioners and they need the extra hand. He needs to reduce their number somehow, and what better way to do this than to have Painted Renoir do the deed for him? And if I haven't mentioned it here, it implies that Painted Verso is able to easily infiltrate Lumiere and able to change or amend their records. So anything that's kept in the records of Lumiere effectively can't be trusted. A possibility of this could be that Painted Verso and Painted Renoir are putting an act together for everyone else to see, but behind the scenes working collaboratively. We see Painted Renoir half eject Mael. We also know that Painted Verso was watching at this scene, but chose not to act. So he saw Painted Renoir approach Mael and knew he wasn't going to harm her or fully eject her from the canvas. I'm not sure why Mael's memories did not return from this in-between place, but we do hear what seems like a discussion between real-world Renoir and Aline taking place. If Painted Verso wanted Mael to benefit, why not let her be ejected from the canvas? Going back a bit, why did Painted Verso not adopt Mael inside Lumiere if he was looking after her anyway? Maybe he doesn't want to get too attached. Maybe he doesn't truly like Mael. Or maybe he just sees her as a tool to bargain with the Descendre family. Yet he keeps her inside the canvas to fuel his own agenda. I have to lean on the side that agree that Verso is a manipulative guy who only cares about the result and doesn't really emotionally care for anyone else. Painted Renoir walks away after this scene, not fighting the rest of the expedition, although this would be the best point in time to fight, because they don't have where was I saying? Right, getting Mael out of the canvas now ensures she doesn't become a threat later, and removing Mael also means no threat to the Paintress. The Lamp Master is keeping SK and the rest of the Expedition 33 busy, so these are the best circumstances possible for Painted Renoir to have a chance. Yet he leaves it be. Why choose to only eliminate Gustav and not the rest of the expedition? Something else which supports this theory is the painted cage you see Painted Renoir trap Mael in. Also, the blow to Gustav is done in a way that no harm comes to Mael or Painted Verso would have intervened. But back to the cages. You probably see others like this throughout the game, stashed with resources. Who could be the one to put them throughout the canvas, just waiting to be found but Painted Verso? Maybe this is what he has been doing over the past 16 years since he was supposedly assigned the role of Mael's ward. He must have known she was going to be under the care of Gustav and extrapolated what age Gustav would be going out to expedition on, and knowing his own sister Painted Alicia well and how she longs for freedom, it wouldn't be a fetch to expect that Mael would embark on the same journey for freedom. So he has been going around preparing everything they need to take down the Paintress. Hell, even the path they should be taking could have been influenced by Painted Verso. What is more eerie are the lamps that guide you where you need to go, which to me suggests that Painted Verso has arranged for these to be left, perhaps using the Lamp Master Neveron, as they show the path you need to follow and who else would have left these here. So you can see where the comparison against Eisen comes from. The whole expedition experience for our group could have been prepared beforehand by Painted Verso's hands. We do see a cake inside the manor that reads 33, which could only be left by someone who had been in Lumiere at the time of the 33rd expedition's embarkment, and also someone who can traverse the rest of the continent, and who else fits that bill but Verso. Now this becomes more interesting when the lights lead you to the Lamp Master and Painted Verso doesn't intervene in the fight. Perhaps he deliberately uses the Lamp Master to hold them there until Painted Renoir arrives on the scene. I would go even as far as to say, could Painted Verso have used some painted abilities to revive the Lamp Master to keep them there for longer? After all, we don't see any other immortal Neverons, or Neverons that self-revive. Or maybe it was this property that the Neveron always had that Painted Verso exploited, which alludes to the fact that Painted Verso from the very beginning planned on sacrificing Gustav in the expedition, because he was keeping the expeditioners there for enough time for Painted Renoir to arrive. But why would he want Gustav to be eliminated from the group? Verso being Verso, you can't take his words on face value. His excuse that Gustav being alive could prevent Mael from sending Aline home doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Gustav was gunning for the paintress just as much as anyone else in the expedition, especially after he believed she took Sophie away from him. He has been throwing rocks at her from the very beginning. To those who say he would have recognized Verso, I don't think he would have. The statues are right there on the harbor, yet no one recognizes him. How can this be, and what makes Gustav any special? At Dark Shores, none of the expeditioners recognized Painted Renoir, who was the commander of Expedition Zero. Someone that important should be known by everyone in Lumiere. So my assumption is either there is some perception filter or some painted ability placed on the statues themselves, perhaps by Painted Verso, to make sure no one are able to recognize him or Painted Renoir. But why would he protect both their identities and not just his own? Now, Painted Verso has helped past expeditions as well, yet I don't believe any of them associate him with Expedition Zero as far as I am aware. Which begs the question, what was the real reason Painted Verso wanted Gustav eliminated? Now, it only makes more sense if Painted Verso let Gustav die, not because he would have swayed Mael, but because he would have become too strong. You can see when he used his overcharge ability, he was able to send Painted Renoir flying. It's just his immortality that got in the way. Maybe he could have overcome more powerful opponents if he had survived. It would be interesting to see a reality where Gustav could one-shot a painter. But unfortunately, the game takes this chance away from us. It seems more likely that Verso feared Gustav becoming too strong because he would achieve control over the canvas and not allow Verso's goal of the destruction of the canvas to be realized. He would rather the painted beings not be in a place to fight against the Descendre family. He could have inherited the trait of wanting control over things from Renoir. Seeing the scene where you run into Painted Clair, it seems like Verso does not know that she has been alive all along and suffering this fate. Yet back at camp, when Lune questioned the sentient Nevrons, Verso quickly shut it down, so he doesn't want anyone investigating the Nevrons. He himself also knows that the Painted family has been given the gift of immortality, so it goes without saying that Painted Clair should be immortal, so why does he assume she is no longer alive? It's not that he truly thinks that, it just seems like a deception he is playing to picture himself as a victim and increase his own place in the group. You can see he asks Mael if Painted Clair can be painted over or healed, yet Mael says no. The same Mael who Painted Verso teaches how to revive people, so he knows a way to heal her, yet now isn't the time for Mael to learn this ability. For this purpose, he willingly let his sister be Gomaged. After the party defeats her, she is shown to Gomage herself, which should be impossible unless the Painted family have painting powers themselves. But why has she not chosen to do this before and only chosen to do this now? You see, Mael says she is Claire's creation. This is the oldest trick in the book. It seems like Painted Renoir played the same trick with Painted Verso, and now Painted Verso is playing the same trick on Mael, but I digress. Although Painted Verso says no, 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 he doesn't really move. He takes one step forward and then 2 steps back. He makes no attempt to prevent what is happening, something which looks like a soul or essence being left behind, but we don't really get an answer as to what that is. We know that Painted Verso has met with real-world Claire before. Who is to say he isn't working alongside her to destroy the canvas? Maybe he is in on what is happening with Painted Claire, and somehow assisted in the what looked like self-Gomage to keep her mouth shut, so no information that could harm his plan would be leaked out. It sounds brutal, almost inhumane that someone would go to such lengths, but this is Painted Verso we are talking about. There is more than meets the eye for the relationship between Painted Verso and Claire. A hint to this is your dialogue with the fading woman, who seems to know about Painted Verso's schemes and states that she wasn't expecting Mael to get this far, but is happy with the turn of events. Verso's initial journal states that Claire took their sister, which makes it look like Claire is his enemy, but then why would he listen to Claire and protect Mael? There are inconsistencies with the messaging in the journals and what he states, but which brings me to the next part of my theory. What if all the journals of the canvas have been sabotaged by Verso to serve his own purpose? Something that hints to this is given the war between painters and writers, it is highly unlikely that Aline or Renoir would be writing journals. But what if Verso is able to pass through the barrier without issue, thanks to his immortality, the same way he is able to exist in the space the young boy paints and keep the canvas world running? Maybe he could stand in front of Aline herself if he wanted to, but lacks the confidence in being able to defeat her alone. If you picture it, he has had 16 years of time to plan how he is going to use Maëlle. What better way than to make sure any material she comes across would not reveal too much information than to check and alter it to his needs? Now, going on a bit of a tangent here, if you've played the game, you'll notice you're locked in by the world's boundaries, and it seemed like it's tattered oil or cracking paint on the edges of the world's boundaries. Something that I do want to know the answer to is what would happen if Painted Verso tried walking beyond the bounds of the worlds? Because of his immortality, would he survive? And what would he see out there? But that's me going on a tangent. Back to topic, it isn't surprising at all if Verso was actually editing the journals, because Lune mentions finding out about the axons from a journal. He makes it sound like an impossible task to find the axons, but a lot of people online seem to be thinking that he words this way, the scenario, to make them do the opposite, to spur them on, as they wouldn't listen to him saying that they need to find the axon. Adding to this here, both Painted Renoir and Painted Verso have kept the scars on their faces, something CL notices. A more wild theory is that Painted Verso or Painted Renoir could be using the cult within Lumiere as a source of information. After all, they were the first two people to support the paintress within Lumiere. But that has no backing, so just mentioning it as a flying thought. Something with more merit is when Painted Renoir meets real Renoir, or the curator as his avatar, it seems like they may have been involved with one another. As Painted Renoir states, we meet at long last, though it's deliberately said in a dubious way. I love that about this game. It leaves a lot open to interpretation, which is exactly what makes this game so amazing. Moving onwards to address the duality of Painted Verso's actions, as Lune describes it best, perhaps he sees things in false dichotomies. I can't find the dialogue, so this picture of our villain should suffice, but I believe he might have memories and feelings towards his painted family, and then the memories implanted by Aline must clash with these memories at times, where he starts to see himself as a member of the real Descender family. He suddenly gets asked to go and help with search and rescue missions with his father as a commander. He then comes across Claire, who tries to end him, but as they are immortal, ends up giving up and telling them the truth of the world. We see Painted Verso is very insecure about his existence, questioning what is real and what is fake. It's even worse for him because it's not just the world, his entire life and memories. He can't know which ones are real and which ones are fake, and this fact only gets worsened when he's met Claire and learned about the reality of the world and recognizes that he has fake memories. So he's effectively got two people living inside his one head. The Painted Verso who came out of nowhere on a random Tuesday that cares about his painted family and would absolutely hate Aline for putting them through the same accident with Alicia getting her face burned. Maybe she role-played the scenario in the canvas, we never find out. In the same head lives a Verso with memories from young, who cares for the paintress, forced to by his own memories. Before Claire, he couldn't differentiate the two, but now he can. So he must have spent his entire life trying to untangle which parts are him and which parts are gifts from Aline. At the end, at the end, you can see he begs Alicia to be unpainted. It doesn't seem like he was going to Marge. He lied about his immortality being linked to Aline. It's just a part of him. It won't go away because Aline is no longer in the canvas. He lied because he is Verso and part of him cares about painted Renoir, but he doesn't stop them from unpainting him as he wants to save Aline. This is his other part talking. It's beautifully complex as a character, at least that's my understanding. I mean, after all these harsh words against him, I do have to play devil's advocate and explain why maybe he is that way. Now my final piece on Painted Verso, he asked CL if she would be happy with a copy of Pierre. I believe this could be foreshadowing that what Maël will revive is a painted copy, not the real thing. But the reason he has told her it is the real thing is to keep her from the truth. Now his character trait is he will lie if he thinks that will protect his loved ones from the bitter truth. This makes more sense when in Maël's ending you don't see painted Claire, painted Alicia, or Julie. Verso loved more than anything else and would have wanted to be brought back if it were truly possible. Also, with Gustav back, it kind of defeats the purpose he had him eliminated for. Again, when you remember that Painted Verso was the one who taught Maël how to revive people, you know, the same Verso who tells a lot of lies, you should really question it. Moving on to real world Verso, I did mention his grave is very oddly shown to be inside the boundaries of the manor in my previous video, and this could also be due to there being no body, as it is very likely he is alive. We find out that part of his soul is in the canvas, and from Professor Curie's video, it seems like this part of the soul doesn't know the real person is dead. Now I believe the soul inside the canvas should be an extension of the soul outside. So the fact that the inside soul doesn't think that the outside person is dead could be the truth. Real Verso could very well be alive. Now Professor Curie did a really amazing video on why this could be the case as well, which I'll signpost here. I did mention that the painted Verso gives off white petals in Verso's ending. Now this could also be a hint that real world Verso is alive. We do notice in the scene it seems like he is in Alicia's room when we see Alicia's flashback of the incident, and he's not in his own room. So if Alicia was able to survive this, then Verso definitely should have survived. That is what logic would dictate. What seems highly likely is that Alicia was required to be a witness of Verso's fake death, and she lost conscious afterwards, as we don't see the horrifying scene of Verso burning alive in her dream. Now in terms of sounds, Verso is shown to have a love for music. Who's to say he couldn't fake screams and escape from the room without anyone else finding out? Maybe he had lost an arm in the process, as the canvas mirrors the real world, and both Gustav and Simon are missing the same arm, which seems to be how the canvas works. Or perhaps the real world Verso was brutal enough to chop his own arm off to leave behind evidence of his death. Different actions from Aline seem to indicate she is not inside the canvas to grieve, but simply to create the illusion she is grieving, though this will be covered in future content. Part of this will be covered in the next video. I believe real world Verso is out there looking for what I am temporarily calling objects of power, a name you might find in games like Control, but I don't have a confirmed in-game lore name for these kinds of objects just yet. I think I've missed the point from the video so far, but there is a library hidden inside the manor, tucked away in a place you have to go underground from the kitchen. and navigate to this hidden place. You can't set up a room like that without the parents knowing. And perhaps this is what painted no, this is what the fading man references when he mentions the folly of his parents. The only purpose that makes sense for having a hidden library is for Verso to master the ability of writing on top of painting, and the reason it's probably hidden away is so no one else finds out about it, especially the painters, because it wouldn't be a good look, right? However, it seems like Alicia may have been drawn into the books, but rather than learning about the power, she just enjoyed reading. And maybe it was from her love of reading the writers did what they supposedly did in setting a trap. Now, the writers could have found out about this and retaliated, and Verso needed then to hide from public view in a place he could continue to master his powers without bringing harm to the Descendre family. But at this point, these are all theories. I keep hammering about this, but only because it's true. At the end of the day, it's all about perspective. Now, before I end this video, I have had a few instances where I've been I've been following the script, and it is getting late on Sunday, and I've just been spending the whole day getting here. But something I've noticed I missed from the previous video is what the paintress, or what I didn't realize until the gap between the previous video and the current video, is what the painted heart symbolizes. So the human-sized paintress we see is the same paintress on top of the monolith that we see in the mansion. So effectively there is no paintress axon, it's just her whole body, which explains why the giant paintress has a missing heart. She has detached it and turned it into this other being. However, that raises further questions. If the paintress's heart has enough energy to escape the dome and wander the continent, why is she not with the painted family full time? And why keep that broken form instead of making it look like her outside self? She isn't spending time with Painted Verso, whom she is supposedly grieving. It adds more questions than answers. Even the fact that the shell of her body is only painting numbers without explanation becomes questionable. Why is she doing this? So Claire was wrong when she said the paintress is trapped above the monolith, but why would Aline want to deceive the Descendre family? When Verso splits his body in half, both halves are able to act like fully fledged beings. Why can someone as powerful as Aline not do the same? Also, if the heart of the paintress is missing, how can she be sad, as Sophie describes her? You need a heart to feel sad, right? But that's content for a future video. I believe that should be time to wrap this video up. On that note, adieu, and I will catch you in the next.